Welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances Control's workshop on quaternary ammonium compounds, also known as QACs, in cleaning products and beauty, personal care, and hygiene products. My name is Jessica Anderson, and I'm the Public Participation Specialist with the Department of Toxic Substances Control, which we will refer to as DTSC throughout this session. Next slide, please. Thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. This workshop is scheduled from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and the purpose of today's webinar is to present an update on our preliminary research for QACs in cleaning products and beauty, personal care, and hygiene products, as well as to hear your feedback. Jennifer Branyan and I will be facilitating today's workshop. Slide 3, please. You are in a view and listen only role. Today we will be taking questions and comments through the Q&A feature. So please go ahead and click on the Q&A button on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen to send your questions. You may send them at any point throughout the webinar, and we will respond during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You may send as many questions as you want. However, we request that you send one question at a time so that we're able to respond to them adequately. We will do our best to respond to the questions in the order that they are received, but please note we will not be taking questions by chat function. You can raise your hand to let us know you have a question, or for those joining by phone, please press *9. We will call on you and prompt you to unmute yourself during that time. Following the Q&A, we will have a 5-minute break and return to begin our public comment section. I will read through the comments live, but we will not be responding to them during this webinar. Additionally, we will be posting this webinar to our YouTube channel, so look out for that in the future. Lastly, please note that we're hosting this webinar from different locations, and we request that you bear with us if there's any lag time or any other technical issues. We sincerely appreciate your patience, understanding, and cooperation in making this a successful meeting. Next slide, please. Okay, today's agenda for the workshop will begin with opening remarks, followed by safer consumer products prioritization process, and then we'll get into the overview of the quaternary ammonium products, or as I mentioned, also known as products, as well as beauty, personal care, and hygiene products. Following that, we'll have our Q&A session. That 5-minute break that I mentioned, we'll come back for the public comment session, and we will finish out with our closing remarks. So as a reminder, DTSC's written public period is open until January 28th, 2025. So please submit your comments no later than 11:59 on January 28th, 2025, and that's 11:59 p.m. I'll now invite our welcome speaker, Robin Christensen, our Safer Consumer Products Deputy Director, to give us some opening remarks, followed by Brian, our environmental scientist, to begin our presentation. Robin?
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual public workshop on quaternary ammonium compounds in cleaning products and beauty, personal care, and hygiene products. My name is Robin Christensen, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Safer Consumer Products Program, also known as the SCP program. I'm so happy to see so many webinar participants here today, and I want to thank you all for joining us in this critical public engagement process. The SCP program first began evaluating quaternary ammonium compounds, or QACs, in cleaning products and beauty, personal care, and hygiene products in late 2021. This was motivated by evidence of increased use and increased human exposure to QACs during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as emerging information about the toxicity of some of these compounds. SCP scientists co-authored a peer-reviewed journal article titled Quaternary Ammonium Compounds, a Chemical Class of Emerging Concern, which was published in the journal Environmental Science and Technology in 2023. And last month, we reached another milestone when we released a background document summarizing DTSC's preliminary research findings on QACs in cleaning products and beauty, personal care, and hygiene products. Today, members of our project team will present an overview of the Safer Consumer Products Framework to illustrate how our program works, followed by a summary of our preliminary research findings and what we've learned about the potential for quacks to cause or to contribute to adverse impacts in humans and the environment. We will also be discussing the next steps in our process and how you can get involved. Your input is very important to us as we continue to refine our research and to potentially propose one or more quack-containing products as priority products under the SCP regulations. I want to thank you again for joining today's virtual public workshop. We do look forward to hearing your comments after all of the presentations. We can't do our work without your input. And now I'd like to introduce Brian Chung, who is going to go over the SCP framework.
Thanks, Robin. So my name is Brian Chung, and I'm an environmental scientist in the SCP program. And yeah, I'll be going over our framework and our prioritization process today. So the framework of our regulations can be summarized, roughly speaking, in 4 steps. The first step is the candidate chemicals list. This is a list of chemicals of potential concern as defined in our regulations. And this represents a menu of chemicals that we can regulate in consumer products. And during the second step, we research consumer products that contain these candidate chemicals. And some of these product chemical combinations can then become priority products, which are product chemical combinations that may cause harm. And we go through a formal rulemaking process to propose these priority products. Not all product chemical combinations will eventually become priority products. Some will, not all. But anyway, once we had proposed a priority product, manufacturers or other responsible entities, they are required to go through an alternatives analysis process. And during this process, they evaluate the priority products for safer alternatives. And these alternatives can be non-chemical alternatives, such as different manufacturing practices or different product design. They can also be chemical alternatives as well, in which the chemical of concern is replaced with safer chemicals. And when the alternatives analysis process starts, that's when the overall compliance and enforcement process starts. And once the alternatives analysis process has been finished, we then go over to the regulatory response step. A regulatory response is an action that can be taken to protect human health or the environment. And DTSC has a range of possible regulatory responses to choose from. Next slide, please. So this diagram is essentially the second step from the previous slide. And it begins with screening research, in which we conduct research into a certain candidate chemical or a certain group of candidate chemicals, as well as the products that contain these chemicals. And this is just screening research. And as part of this research, we also conduct public engagement as well, such as this workshop and also this public comment period. And the 2 goals of this public engagement effort are, first, to inform the public of our findings so far. And the second goal is to gather feedback and information from you guys to further inform our research. So that's just the first step in our prioritization process. It takes a lot more before we can even propose a priority product. And in order for a product chemical combination to become a priority product, it needs to follow two principles. The first principle is that there must be potential exposures to a candidate chemical in the priority product. And then one or more exposures must then have the potential to contribute to or cause significant or widespread adverse impacts. And I will now pass the mic on to Jennifer Brandon.
Hi, as Brian mentioned, I'm Jennifer Branyan. I am a senior environmental scientist leading some of the research here at Safer Consumer Products on quaternary ammonium compounds, or QACs. Today we'll be doing an overview of QACs in cleaning products, beauty, personal care, and hygiene products. And throughout the presentation, I'll generally refer to these as personal care products so that we don't have the mouthful. Next slide. So a little background on QACs. They're a class of chemicals that contain one or more nitrogen atoms with a positive charge. So you can see the structure here on the right. The nitrogen is there in the center, and there can be any number of constituents around the nitrogen. There's been evidence of increasing human exposure, especially with increased use of QACs during the COVID-19 pandemic, which, coupled with emerging toxicity information for certain QACs, has led us here at SCP to look at the entire class of QACs more closely. This has prompted SCP to perform a systematic assessment of the uses and hazard traits of the larger class of QACs in cleaning and personal care products. Next slide. So SCP did a systematic assessment to understand the use of QACs in personal care and cleaning products because we did not have a clear understanding of the use of QACs in these products. This included the entire class of QACs, which were added to our candidate chemical list in 2021. We focused the personal care and cleaning product categories within our priority project work plan because these products were widely used by people across California, as well as in households, schools, and buildings in a wide variety of applications. And of note, while we did include cleaning products covered by the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, or FIFRA, in our assessment, we do not have authority over these products for any future priority product listings. So some of the QACs and the products identified, we used the Mintel Global New Product Database for market research, and we were able to identify 263 QACs used in over 19,000 products from 78 product categories. SCP often observed that there were often multiple QACs in the same product with different functional uses. This may be as a FIFRA registered pesticide, active ingredient, an FDA-approved antimicrobial and over-the-counter drug products, or in other non-FIFRA, non-drug products. So from our findings, these are the top 10 categories with most frequently contained QACs. The type and quantity of QAC varied widely within that given product category. So for instance, we identified 157 different QACs used as ingredients in shampoo. According to the federal EPA, there are 31 QACs that are high production volume chemicals. The use of QACs used as antiseptics in personal care products have increased in more recent years, especially after the discontinued use of triclosan and fluorocarbon, which were previously used for this purpose. Since many disinfectant cleaning products contain QACs, coupled with the increased use of these products during the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been an increase of exposure to QACs. So a few biomonitoring and indoor air and dust studies confirmed that human exposure to well-studied QACs is widespread. While we know that the arrows of these images here are facing different directions, we can see from these graphs and the studies that they've come from, that it shows an increase in quack concentrations in the indoor dust from before the pandemic to during the pandemic. Human serum also showed an increase in exposure during those same timeframes. The human exposure can be from both routes of inhalation and hand to mouth exposure. Sorry. The quacks that we use in our indoor environments are likely to accumulate with settled dust and surface films. Consumer products that contain quacks are washed down the drain and are a source of quacks getting into wastewater. Quacks have been detected in wastewater, surface water, and sediment worldwide. Most research on quacks toxicity focuses only on a small subset of quacks that are often used as pesticides, such as disinfectant cleaning products and as antimicrobials in personal care products. A limited number of quacks are associated with a variety of adverse health effects in human and rodent models. And then here are some of the concerns with certain quacks, some of which are prevalent in consumer products. There's also toxicity of some quacks to algae, aquatic invertebrates, and fish. The environmental levels of some of these are approaching protective thresholds. So there were many quacks that we found that were understudied. The quacks that we did have toxicity and exposure data on were from a small subset of quacks that were primarily used, as mentioned, in disinfectants and antimicrobials. So these under the street lamp are a couple of the quacks that were researched, but there are many more that have not been. So little information was available about many of the quacks we identified in products that were highly used by consumers. Many of them lacked published environmental studies or toxicological studies. These are example product categories that frequently contained understudied quacks. So 68% of body washes, 46% of concealers, and 35% of shampoos contained the quacks listed below each of the images. So we'd love your input. SCP still has many questions concerning quacks. Some of these being, what additional information is available for quacks? Are there other hazard traits that are relevant to quacks? What data is available on these product types, and how are they used and by whom are they used? What alternatives are available for the use of quacks, and which functional uses present the greatest challenges in terms of identifying alternatives for quacks? These questions and more can be found in the linked background document. So in summary, we are considering some of the hazard traits of some of the known quacks. Some quacks have hazard traits such as dermal toxicity, respiratory toxicity, immune toxicity, reproductive and developmental toxicity, along with biochemical effects. There's been an increase in both the use of certain quacks, but also the human and aquatic exposure of quacks, in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Quacks are used in many cleaning and personal care products. SCP's evaluation has shown that there are over 250 quacks in a wide variety of personal care products. And there's a lack of research on many quacks. So next steps. In the short term, we plan to evaluate the following product types for potential priority product listings. We'll be looking at antibacterial soaps and body washes, along with hand sanitizers and antiseptic skin wipes. We will also work on advancing our understanding of understudied quacks by conducting our own research, engaging with interested parties, and collaborating with external partners such as the EPA to highlight our data needs and advance our understanding of understudied quacks. So thank you for joining us in today's presentation on quaternary ammonium compounds. If there is information that you would like to share with us here at SCP on understudied quacks, or have comments or questions, please contact the program at saferconsumerproducts@dtsc.ca.gov. And the public comment period will open until January 28th, 2025, which you may access through the CalSafer portal. Thank you, Jessica.
Jennifer. Okay, we've now reached our question and answer session. We will do our best to respond to the to the questions in the order that we receive them. As a reminder, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Use the raise hand feature or press *9 to raise your hand if you're joining by phone. You'll be called on and prompted to unmute yourself. As I mentioned earlier, following the Q&A, we're going to have a 5-minute break, and then we'll move on to the public comment section. If for some reason we don't have a whole lot of questions, we might shorten this time. So I just want to make you guys aware of that, since I don't see any questions in the Q&A feature at this time. Okay, I see some questions populating, so we'll go through those. First one says, will there be opportunities for public engagement following this initial present stage?
So there's definitely space for engagement. As mentioned before, if you send us, information or comments, questions to our Safer Consumer Products website through the CalSafer portal or to our email, the saferconsumerproducts@dtsc.ca.gov, we would love to hear your input as we go through this process.
Next question says, will CARB be sharing data from consumer product surveys with DTSC, given it is gathering formulation data for many of the categories?
And Cooper, do you have information on CARB?
Yeah, we have worked with them in the past. I think with quacks, some of the issues around the nomenclature issue, but we've definitely reached out with them in the past and will continue to do so. If there's specific topics around there that you think would be helpful to communicate with them on, let us know. But yeah, we will continue to do so moving forward.
Thanks, Dr. Cooper. Okay, so the next question is, why is FIFRA products exempted and FDA products are not?
Christine, would you like to go over our regulatory restrictions?
Sure, to the best of my ability. Within the Safer Consumer Product regulations, consumer products are specifically spelled out in statute, which purposely does not include the FIFRA regulated products. Versus the FDA products, there's room for improvement based on FDA's regulatory framework. So while we try not to duplicate efforts, if there are personal care products that maybe are falling through the cracks based on FDA's regulations, it's beneficial for us to regulate them.
All right, thank you so much. Next question says, will DTSC grant an extension to the deadline?
Sorry, trying to unmute. I'm not sure which deadline we're referring to, if it's the public comment period or not, but we're keeping open the public comment period until that date in 2 weeks. But as always, if there is any time after that you have questions for SCP, you are always welcome to reach out to us at our email program, and we can get back to you to continue that relationship.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next question. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just to follow up, if anybody specifically requests an extension, we will consider it if it's an extension to the comment period.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you for that clarification. Next question says, would it be worth ranking the QACs as some may be more potent than others?
Tom, would you like to weigh in?
Sure, it's an interesting question. It's one that I don't think we have all the information to be able to do. So where we're at is that we looked for the hazard trait exposure information about all the quacks that we found in products. And what we found was that some of the quacks, a few of the quacks have a lot more data out there published than others. Most of them, there's not too much data. So we're not at a place where we can do that type of ranking, really.
And even within those where we do have data, we're looking at a combination of hazard and exposure to try and figure out which ones to potentially prioritize to move forward. So it's not necessarily ranking as much as looking at those two factors, as Brian talked about.
All right. All right, our next question says, you mentioned that the quacks increased during COVID, but this was due to disinfectant use. Is there data to show that personal care and cleaning product usage has increased?
Go ahead, Ann Cooper.
Yeah, I was just going to say the two studies that Jennifer talked about, I mean, showed a general increase to quacks that are used and definitely disinfectant use, but also some products that are personal care products as well. So I think there indicates a general increase in use of those types of quacks across personal care and cleaning products. So that's some of the information that we've been looking at.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next question says, I may have missed this, but which product ingredient database was used to evaluate the use and presence of quacks in the products?
So we looked at Mintel, MINTEL, which is the global marketing database. And so we were able to do some background research on the products and whether or not they contained quacks. And then we did more research on top of that to if we were able to distinguish the quacks within there and then, you know, kind of continue through the process of the assessment.
Perfect, thank you. Next question says, can you explain the timeline between initial priority hand sanitizers and antiseptic skin wipes and the understudies quacks list?
So we are doing background research on those two particular product sections. We don't have a finalized timeline in terms of when information might come out, but we are currently doing research. So if you do have, you know, comments or questions about those particular products that maybe you think that we could utilize in looking at that, that information would be greatly appreciated.
And I'll just say the understudy quack side, I think that's more of a long-term plan because they are understudy. I think part of the goal here is to just share the information about the fact that there are so many other quacks out there that don't have a lot of information, share what we've learned, and see what information we can gather. And that's more of a long-term effort.
Thank you. Okay, next question says, collaborating with external partners such as EPA was mentioned. What about the FDA?
We talk with the FDA on a regular basis about a variety of our projects. So the short answer is yes, we do collaborate with FDA.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, our next question says antiseptics, i.e. the hand sanitizers, antimicrobial soaps, etc., are regulated by FDA CDER as NDA or OTC. Similar to your exemptions of the FIFRA products regulated by EPA, why are these FDA products being included?
I was kind of reiterate what Christine said earlier. So the FIFRA products are excluded by statute. So it's absolutely cannot work on those by statute because they are not included in the definition of consumer products that we are allowed to work on. That is not the case for FDA regulated products. For those products, what we have to do is make sure that we are not duplicating the regulatory efforts of FDA, and that's something that we look at on a per product basis, and we'll continue to do in this case. So we'll continue to do that as we evaluate moving forward here. And definitely aware of all the efforts and an impressive number of acronyms in that question. So definitely aware of that, and we'll continue to evaluate.
Thank you for clarifying that even more. Okay, so the next one says, can you please explain the justification for evaluating hand sanitizers and antimicrobial soaps in the SCP program? When these products are regulated by FDA, only 2 quacks are used in those products, and human safety information is being addressed according to the FDA's monogram requirements. So I think we talked a little bit about this, but I'll open it up for any further clarification.
I can speak to that a little bit. You know, it is true, and we're aware that there's been a process at FDA to evaluate the safety and the efficacy of those 2 quacks in those over-the-counter consumer antiseptic products like hand sanitizer. It's our understanding that FDA does not have plans to regulate these products further at this time. And our program has a different scope and different goals. Our listing of a priority product is not meant to be a ban. the goal of this is for manufacturers to seek safer alternatives. And as Ann Cooper mentioned, for any potential future priority product listing that we may pursue, we'll always continue to assess other state and federal regulatory programs that are relevant to make sure that whatever we do does not conflict or overlap.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so I think we answered this question a little bit, but I'll open it up after just to clarify. It says extension to the 28th, January 28th deadline. Is that an option? So as Christine mentioned, that is always, that'll always be a consideration if you have some after the deadline. But we do encourage you to please try to submit all your comments by 11:59 p.m. on January 28th, 2025. Is there anyone that wants to add on to that? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
You covered it well, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next one. It says, how many beauty and personal care products will be affected, and will they be required to conduct an alternatives assessment?
But I think that question is much further along in the process that Brian mentioned. We are just at the initial stages of doing, research and trying to find out what types of quacks are in what. So we are going to be looking deeper into the two sections that I mentioned at the end, the wipes and the hand sanitizers. But so for now, we are not looking at all of the sections. We will be looking at those more closely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next one says, will quacks considered safe in the use of cosmetics by CIR be exempt from the priority list?
As Jennifer just said, we're still at the preliminary research stage. We haven't made any decisions about prioritization at this time. And while we are aware of CIR and their evaluations, we would not necessarily exempt products that CIR may have been considered safe. Like, we would evaluate their research before we would make any decisions about that. And for those who are unaware, CIR stands for the Cosmetics Ingredient Review Panel, which is a panel that is made up predominantly of scientists who work in the industry, in the personal care products industry specifically.
For clarifying that, Christine, and thank you for answering that. Our next question says, many of the quacks that highlighted for use in personal care products such as bentanes are listed on the US EPA Safer Choice program, Green Circle. Have you consulted the US EPA on their analysis?
Yeah, we are in talks with EPA, and I will also just reiterate, like the betaines and stuff, those are in the category of the understudied. So those are ones that we're not necessarily saying they're good or bad. We just are asking for additional information. So if anyone has any of that, please send it our way. But yeah, we are in talks with the EPA frequently on this.
Next question, so what is your prioritization timeline?
So as mentioned, we are still doing research for our next steps. We are looking into these categories to see what our findings are, if there's research backgrounds to move forward on those. We do not have a set timeline yet for coming out with these documents, but as mentioned, if you submit comments within our public comment period, and you have information that you'd like to integrate into doing that research, that is helpful. And we will also be continuing our conversations within the public forum. So you will know what we're doing along those timelines. We also have a mailing list if you'd like to sign yourself up for them to be receiving information back on what those timelines look like as they come up.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next question says, is it better to show, or it's not a question, it's a comment. It says, it is better to show the use of quacks after COVID. Does anyone want to comment on that?
So if you've got information on that, please submit it to us. We'd welcome it.
you. So the next one is a question. It says, when will cleaning products be evaluated for potential priority product listing?
Go ahead, Dawn.
Jennifer. Okay, I was gonna say, we've continued to look at cleaning products throughout all this process, but many of those, at least within the focus of the antimicrobial and disinfecting products, they do fall under that FIFRA umbrella, and so therefore are outside of our authority. But we have been including those in the evaluation that we've been doing to date.
All right, thank you. The next one says, I've heard the speakers say that some quacks are understudied. Do you have a list of studies that you would consider to compose a complete data set of studies needed to evaluate quack safety?
Tom, do you want to speak to that?
I don't know that we have a complete list that we can run down and check off boxes. But what I would say is that for some of those quacks that we highlighted as understudied in one of the slides that Jennifer showed, for instance, there are quacks there that have not been looked for in environmental monitoring studies in the published literature. They're quacks that are used in products that are used a lot, high volume chemicals. But we don't know what their presence in the environment might be. So that's one example of the type of information that we look for, and we didn't find. There are others. Would anyone like to add to that?
No, thanks, Tom. All right, next one says, do these products include baby products, or baby products regulated different?
I'll take this one, at least on a general level. Within the regulatory framework of our program, baby products are not regulated different than any other product.
All right. Next question says, what do you believe, or why do you believe you are not duplicating FDA's efforts for personal care products?
At this point, so we're not proposing any actual action. It's still in the screening phase, but if we do move forward, we'll consider the scope, the adverse impacts that they're evaluating for the FDA, and our scope, which is, very full life cycle of the product, and see which adverse impacts we're considering versus what they're considering and attempting to protect, and see at that point.
Thank you.
And just to add a little bit to that answer, some people may not be aware, but the FDA does not require any like pre-market safety testing before personal care products enter the market. And this is part of the reason why we continue to evaluate products that are regulated by the FDA.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on. Next question says, will DTSC reconsider its position if and when the FDA completes its monogram on the 2 QAAT?
Yeah, we're definitely going to stay up to date on what the FDA is doing, and if they take any additional action, then we will review it and see how that aligns with what we are doing at the time.
Thank you. Okay, this one's directed to Tom. It says, I think you're in error to suggest that the FDA will not be regulating these products. There are 2 Category 3 lawfully marketed, but they will undergo a GRASE evaluation in the future. Not sure if anyone wants to comment on that.
I think that's generally recognized as safe and effective acronym. Tom, I think that's directed to you, but we'll also just say that if you have any additional information on that, send it our way.
I might jump in, Cooper.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, because there's sort of a theme about, other people regulating things and determining that they may already be safe. What I just wanted to highlight that I'm Andre Algazi. I'll be speaking later. I'm a branch manager in the program, and our regulations sort of preclude us from regulating a consumer product for this with respect to the same exposure and adverse impact that's already regulated by somebody else, unless we find that doing so would meaningfully enhance protection of public health and the environment. So that's one point I wanted to make. And then the second one is that, so we're always monitoring what's going on in other agencies, state and federal, to make sure that, we're considering whether or not, we are meaningfully enhancing protection in some hypothetical future regulation. Secondly, sorry, I lost my train. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Andre. Okay. Next question says, what is the definition of a quack in the product in respect to intentionally added, indirectly added impurities, residuals?
I can answer that one to start. The analysis that we described here, this systematic assessment, we were looking at intentionally added quacks, and the information we were using was from product ingredient labels. So we really were just thinking about intentionally added chemicals in this assessment that we described today.
Thank you, Tom.
But also, if you have information on quacks that are present in other forms, then let us know.
All right, thank you. Okay, this is a comment. It says your time frame of January 28th comments is very short, as you issued this document in December 2024, and there was a holiday period. Does anyone want to comment on that?
As mentioned before, you can request an extension if you so desire to, and as always, you are welcome to send us an email or a comment through CalSafer portal to do so.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, next one says, one purpose of DTSC's system is to have a AA, but in case of OTCs, we are mandated to use alcohol or BKC. That is really no AAA to be performed. It seems inappropriate to ask for AA when one cannot perform the as alternatives exist.
Tom, do you have any thoughts, or do you want me to? No. Okay.
Go ahead.
So say, we're still early in the process. If you have thoughts on that, we would love to talk to you more about that process and what that might look like down the line.
All right. Moving on. Says, okay, what is the scope of cleaning product? Can you provide the definition, and does it include automotive cleaning products?
Tom, do you remember if it included automotive cleaning products in the evaluation?
I think there's two parts here. One is what's the definition of cleaning product. Now that's spelled out,
That does
in our
include-
regulations, right? That would include automotive cleaning products.
That does include.
But I think the database that we used for this work likely does not include many automotive cleaning products. As Jennifer mentioned, we were using the Mintel Global New Product Ingredient Database as one of our major sources for this work.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, next one says, CIR is not made up of personal care product scientists. Please review who is on the CIR, for they are experts in various fields. All right, thank you for clarifying that. Is anyone else? Okay. All right, next one says, hello, hello, what were the approximate quacks concentration levels found in shampoo, and what methods were used? Thank you.
So we currently are not looking at the concentrations of each quack in each product. What we've done is a more preliminary systematic assessment by looking at the data that is on the back of each product to say that a quack is intended added to that product. So we are not currently looking, nor have we yet, if we do, to to see what the concentrations are in there. But if you have information as to concentrations of certain quacks within these products, we would love to hear about that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, there's another clarifying comment. Comment to clarify. It says the CIR scientific panel is not made up of preliminary industry members. The panel consists of toxicologists, FDA, and consumer groups. It is independent of the cosmetic industry itself. Thank you for clarifying that as well. I'm going to move on to the next question. It says, is the list in Appendix A of the background document a complete list of all possible quacks found in Mintel? Are there other possible quacks to be studied?
So there are other possible quacks to be studied. What we did was compile a list of different quacks lists that different synonyms, different names that numbered in the thousands, and we queried all of those in Mintel. And what we came up with was 263 quacks that were present on product ingredient lists listed in Mintel.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, next one says, are there products that you would, are there products that you recommend? And if so, where is this list posted? This question is for personal products.
So we don't currently recommend certain products. If you look on SCP's website in our frequently asked questions, there are a couple of links there that can help you make decisions about product choices. But as part, Safer Consumer Products program, we are not here to recommend certain products.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the next one is a statement. It says that statement regarding product testing is misleading. There are safety substantiation requirements. So does anyone want to comment on that clarification?
What I meant by the product testing is that we at DTSC in the SCP program have not done product testing. So if that's what this is referring to, Ann Cooper?
I think it was about Christine's comment about the ingredients, but I also know with the antimicrobials and stuff, there's different levels of product testing required. So just thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
And I think it was about my statement that the FDA doesn't require safety testing prior to products being on the market. And at least for non-prescription products, there is typically not safety testing requirements, although there is some safety, like they said, there is some safety substantiation after products are on the market or in the market, if there's complaints. But again, I'd like to just, we're not experts on FDA regulations. We're more experts on the safer consumer product regulations. So we do appreciate that people are providing additional information. I'd also like to remind people right now, we're specifically in our Q&A section, and we request that you hold your comment until we get to our comment period, which will have a dedicated time for comments following the Q&A.
So the next question says, in your continued research, will you be using read-across approaches to bridge toxicological data among similar quacks?
So we're exploring all kinds of different approaches to try and get additional information on those kind of understudied quacks. And we're going to be doing that more long-term as we go forward, including our work with EPA. So more to come on that.
All right, thank you. It says, is there a complete list of quacks being reviewed and CAS numbers?
If you want to speak more on that. I know that appendix has the full list of quacks that we found in consumer products.
Yeah.
So those, yeah.
I mentioned there is a larger list of thousands of different names, synonyms, CAS numbers that we compiled at the very beginning of this research. The nomenclature for these chemicals is complex, and one substance can have many different names. can have different CAS numbers. One CAS number can refer to a mixture, so multiple unique substances. So the what we decided to do in this background document that we released is release a list of names of the chemicals that we identified in Mintel as being used in the consumer products that we were looking at in this research to keep things simple. And that's in Appendix A of the background document.
Thank you, Tom.
But I think, I'm sorry, I'll just add on to that, Tom, right? If they go, so we've been working with EPA we've been working on a nomenclature and kind of mapping some of those names with all the different CAS numbers and synonyms. And we're working with the EPA on that in their CompTox database. So if you look at the names in Appendix A and look those up in the EPA CompTox database, you can go to their synonyms tab for that chemical, and it should give you a lot more information about what's known about CAS numbers and other synonyms for that specific quack. So if the one that you see on the list of Appendix A is not the one that you recognize, it might help to go and look on CompTox. So that's been a large effort we've been working on. So I don't know if someone has the link to CompTox, then they might be able to pop in the chat. But that's been a huge help, a huge effort we've been undertaking to help deal with some of the nomenclature issues associated with the class.
All right, thank you. Next one says, did you say if there was a database or a list of the quacks in your report Appendix 1 that has a CAS numbers?
Yeah, that's that CompTox database that I was just referring to that Natalie, thank you, just put in the chat. So that should be helpful.
Okay. Next one says, isn't GRASE considered an industry get out of jail free card because it is not kept up to date?
I don't think we'll comment on that one. It's I think FDA thing.
And I'd like to encourage our attendees to try to focus their questions on the information, like clarifying questions on the information presented today or information on our background document that you have questions on.
So that doesn't look like it's applicable to our webinar today. So I'm going to move on to the next one. It says, have you noticed any health program trends in the general population and epidemiology studies or poison control centers from quacks that is sparking this initiative?
Tom or Ann Cooper?
I'm wondering if our colleague Natalie might be able to speak to that. What I
Hi,
can say
everyone.
is that,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, Tom.
What I can say is that there are published reports of asthma and skin effects triggered by exposure to quacks, particularly occupational exposures leading to asthma and respiratory effects.
And this is Natalie Pham, the toxicologist on the project. And just to follow up on what Tom had shared, we have noted trends in respiratory inflammation and respiratory effects. And again, as Christine mentioned, this workshop is to engage and gather more information. So if there's other noted health problem trends that the public can provide for our review and consultation, that would be helpful as well.
And just want to clarify, this is for a subset of quacks that we know about. And so this is what sparked the effort to learn about what quacks are being used where. So we, have been seeing some increasing data on toxicity associated with some of these quacks, increasing use, increasing exposure. So that's what kicked off this initiative to better understand the use of all quacks across personal care and cleaning products. And so that's where we are today. We're trying to share the information about what we've learned about the use of quacks across all the cleaning and personal care products categories, which highlighted the number of quacks that we don't know a ton about.
And I would just add that as Brian Chung mentioned in his presentation, we aren't necessarily, our standard is that the narrative standard that we use to determine whether we can or should regulate a chemical and consumer product is potential for exposure and potential for adverse impact. So it's not necessary that we find definitive evidence that the product is causing harm for us to at least to get to this point. Obviously, we aren't interested in regulating things where we're not, doing something that's meaningfully protective. But as Ann Cooper said, the initiative that we're talking about today wasn't sparked by necessarily increases in health problems, but increases in detection and biomonitoring, new data on toxicology of these compounds, things like that. Thanks.
Thank you, Andre. Okay, our next question says, is the information used in the Mintel database publicly available?
It's not. It is a paid subscription only database.
All right, thank you. Next one says, the list of quacks in scope is quite long. Given the speaker's comments on considering exposure and hazard, has modeled data been used to narrow focus for further evaluation to those with actual potential risk? And will the outcome of the efforts to evaluate be publicly communicated?
So my comments about exposure and hazard are only on the quacks that we do have information on. We don't have enough information on all of the other quacks because there isn't any researched data for us to review. So that's not quite yet a possibility. But if you do happen to have information on under-researched quacks or quacks that you know about that you can't, pull up documents on, we would love to hear about them. That is part of our input request for the public today.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Okay, next question says, do you have a process to ensure the accuracy of the data you obtain from the Mintel database and to identify data gaps in the Mintel database?
The Mintel database is ingredient labels. Essentially, Mintel buys and purchases and tabular, records the ingredient data on the product label. So they actually provide images of the products, as I understand it. So we can check it against what they say is in there.
And in terms of data gaps, I mean, I'm sure there's specific product categories that are not covered. I will say it is, in terms of the product ingredient information, it's one of the best out there that we've found in terms of comprehensiveness for specifically personal care and cleaning products. So it may not be perfect, but it's been a really great resource for us in terms of being able to systematically screen for the presence of ingredients, like is what we did here. So it's been a great resource just to give us kind of a general understanding of where these chemicals are used.
And I will say that Mintel is not the only tool that we use. So it is a tool in our tool bag, but we will get the product ingredient labels and then move from there. So there are many different spaces that we are getting from, and we are not solely relying on Mintel data.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. So the next one we have, it says, I noticed your background document that you did not mention the word benefit or efficacy with respect to quacks. How do you factor in positive attributes such as product preservation of these chemistries in the selection phase of the program?
I can start and somebody can add in or supplement whatever I have to say on the topic, but our framework for regulating or identifying a priority product is potential for adverse exposure and potential for adverse impact. When we get to the third stage that Brian described in his presentation, which is the alternatives analysis, part of that is for the, typically the product manufacturer to identify the functional purpose of the ingredients. So, and then that sort of is a lens through which alternatives are looked at. So the positive attributes, we assume that we identify why these quacks are added to products, and that includes preservative functions. So if we were to regulate a specific product with with one or more of these quaternary ammonium compounds, we would, talk about that, the benefits or the reasons why those compounds were being used in the consumer product. And then during the alternatives analysis phase, the person performing that analysis would identify, the requirements that are that chemical or those chemicals fulfill in the consumer product. I don't know if somebody would like to supplement or what I just said.
Thank you, Andre. Okay, next one says, are there specific regulatory concerns or restrictions related to the concentration of quacks and leave-on versus rinse-off hair care products?
Not in the framework of our regulatory construct. We have a broader scope than other regulatory programs or agencies. We use a precautionary approach. We're not required to perform a risk assessment when identifying priority products. As has been stated a few times now, our regulations require us to find that exposure to a chemical of concern in a product has potential to contribute to or cause significant or widespread adverse impacts to human health or the environment. So it's a different kind of lens that we use.
Thank you, Tom.
And just to follow up, since this question is about hair care products, that was outside the scope of the evaluation
No.
for quacks.
No, we
Okay.
included them. Yeah.
Okay. Could you speak to that, Ann Cooper?
Yeah, no, we evaluated them in hair care products, but I don't think there's currently any restrictions on the use of quacks in hair care products that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, it says, since there are so many different names for different quacks, it is difficult as a consumer to avoid quacks in products. What organization would regulate quack labeling, and what would need to happen in order to start having clear labels?
Actually, not sure who actually regulates the labels.
FDA.
FDA. Okay.
The FDA is in charge of labeling of personal care products and the ingredients. So that falls under their purview.
And Cooper, do you want to say anything about the paper?
I was about to say, yeah, so we talked about it previously, but the CompTox database that Natalie put the link to, that hopefully will be a resource. If you find an ingredient on a label and you think that has the Ammonium, that kind of the end words that you think might be a quack, you can put it into CompTox database, and it hopefully should pull up and let you know if it's a quack or not. And like we said, just because it's a quack does not necessarily mean it's good or bad. There's so many out there. But it should help you at least better understand more about what it is and help with some of the nomenclature issues. So, and we're working on a paper talking about the nomenclature that we've developed as well.
And I'll add one more bit to that. Part of the issue with the labeling is that it depends on what type of product it is. So FDA does cover labeling of personal care products, but EPA would be in charge of labeling requirements for pesticidal cleaning products, disinfectants.
And the same quack may be labeled differently for an EPA product than an FDA product.
Right.
It can depend. So.
Thank you for that clarification. Next one says, as Mintel, including ingredient statements, will bias towards personal care products, which include ingredient statements on labels. What are the other information sources used with similar information on products not in the personal care product category?
For this product, for this assessment, we focused on Mintel, but that is a whole nother webinar on the lots of different ways that we spend to try and get product ingredient information because it takes a lot of work. EPA has a lot of resources. I don't know if others want to comment on the lots of different ways that we get product ingredient information, but
I just add that Mintel does include a lot of cleaning products.
They
So
do.
it's not just personal care.
they do.
Okay. Next question says, what would be your approach to estimate consumer exposure for each product type to generate the priority list? What exposure models would you consider?
We don't necessarily have to model exposure per our regulations. We have regulatory requirements that talk about exactly the lots of different ways that we can estimate exposure outside of generating a specific number through a model. So we'll be considering those as well as potential models as well.
Thank you. Okay. Someone said, I meant a label with an ingredient statement. Does anyone want to comment on that?
Well, I think the next two comments actually answer each other.
Okay. So the next comments, it does say comment. So I just want to remind everyone, we're going to have a 5-minute break coming up here in a second, and we're going to come back for our public comment period. So if you want this to be recorded under the public comment period, please do that after the 5-minute break. I'm going to read it really quick anyways. And as I mentioned, please include that after the 5-minute break during our public comment period if you want it to be recorded as a public comment. The comment says, under California SB 258 law, cleaning products do have a mandatory label as well as an electronic disclosure requirement since 5 years ago. And it looks like the statement, I meant label with an ingredient statement, is included in that. So does anyone want to comment on that?
No, it's just a good point that cleaning products have ingredient labels as well in California. So it certainly helps make sure that the mental database includes more than just personal care products. And thanks for that reminder.
Thank you. All right. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions here. I'm going to wait about a minute or so and see if anyone is finishing up typing a question. As a reminder, we're going to do a 5-minute break and then we're going to come back and do public comments. So see if we'll wait a couple more seconds here. Make sure that no one else has any further clarifying questions regarding the scope of our webinar here today. Okay, looks like we have one more. It says, where can we find the appendix on the full list of QACs?
So the QACs that we have research on, those are included in the background document, which there is a link to in the chat.
Okay, thank you. And I'll leave another couple seconds here, make sure there are no further clarifying questions. Okay. So we're now going to take a short 5-minute break and we'll return at, looks like we'll return at 10:12. So go ahead. You should see the timer on the top right corner of your screen. When we return, I'll read through each comment, but please note that we will not be responding to comments at this webinar. So we have a couple clarifying questions that came in later. I'm going to actually pause the timer and we'll go ahead and answer those really quick just because we have a little bit of time here. Okay, so it says, am I understanding correctly that the fate exposure and hazard models are not being used to prioritize the list? Several can be run with minimal data, and I am not clear on based on the previous comments.
We can use modeling and we do use modeling at times. My previous comment was just that our regulations spell out lots of ways that we can assess exposure, market presence, biomonitoring, other ways that we can assess exposure outside of just models, but we can and do use models as well. We have lots of different ways that we can assess things like exposure. Natalie, you popped on. I don't know if you want to speak more to that as well. But
Sure. So Natalie again, Natalie Pham. And some of the ways we gather information for our background documents is through literature review. So although models are available for exposure, as mentioned again, I think during Brian Chung's presentation, it's the potential for exposure that we mostly consider. Exposure models are also utilized in our program. I think at this time, because of the level of uncertainty of the current exposure models, like use talks and whatnot, they don't really warrant the application in this specific case at this time. If there's more information where we can get a suitable candidate of class of QACs or subclass of QACs to illustrate potential exposure in the product types, then we would revisit it. But if you have more information on different types of exposure models that you believe would be applicable for QACs, then I think that would be something we could also explore and revisit as well.
Natalie. Yeah, it says, does that list include cast numbers?
Appendix A does not. It just includes the names, and that's like Tom was saying, those quacks and cast numbers don't always mix very well because there's lots of multiple casts per quack. But if you put the individual quack name into CompTox, it can tell you the list of cast numbers that are associated with that particular quack, because oftentimes it's multiple.
Thank you, Dr. Doherty. Okay, looks like this might be the last question. It says, will the text of questions in this Q&A box be available after the webinar? So I might be able to answer that. So we will have a recording of this webinar that's going to go up on our DTSC YouTube channel. So there will be a recording of this that you can view. If you do want a list of the questions specifically, please email us at the Safer Consumer Products, and we'll go ahead and send those out to anyone requesting. Okay, and it looks like we have one final question on here. It says, sorry I missed this earlier, but has the question been answered if there will be max concentrations for intentionally added quacks?
So we are not currently in the stage of assessing concentrations of quacks in products. So we do not have a list of max concentrations currently.
All right, thank you. Alrighty, seeing that there are no further questions, I'm gonna start our 5-minute break here. We'll come back and do the public comment section. As I mentioned, I will read through the comments, but please note we will not be responding to comments during the webinar. So please go ahead and start the 5-minute break. We'll be back at 10:16. All right, thank you, everyone. So welcome back to the DTSC's webinar on quacks. We have now reached the public comment period of our webinar today. So as I mentioned earlier, please go ahead and click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your toolbar to enter in your comments. I will go ahead and read through the comments. We will not be responding to them at this webinar. So please go ahead and enter those in. I will give a few moments for those to be typed in. Okay, I'm still not seeing any comments. We'll allow a few more minutes just to make sure. Okay, I still don't see any typed in the box. If there's anyone joining by phone, please go ahead and press *9 to let us know you have a comment. We will prompt you to unmute yourself. And those that are in the webinar and you want to actually make a verbal comment, you can go ahead and click on the raised hand feature, and we'll prompt you to unmute yourself as well to make your comment. So currently, it says, I urge you to review the CIR reports as they have a great deal of safety data. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other comments, but as I mentioned, please go ahead and click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your toolbar to submit any written comments. If you're joining us by phone or would like to make a verbal comment, please click on raised hand or press *9 if you're joining by phone, and we will call on you to prompt you to unmute yourself. We have a long comment here, and I'm going to go ahead and read through it really quick. It says, "Good morning. My name is Mary from the Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, and we are the public agencies that own and operate waste collection systems and waste water treatment facilities in the Bay Area. Wastewater treatment uses physical, chemical, and biological processes to clean sewage, and these processes are essential to protecting public health and the environment. We know from experience of other wastewater treatment agencies in California that quacks can harm wastewater treatment. Specifically, quacks can disrupt the biological treatment process by inhibiting the growth of nitrifying bacteria, which are the beneficial bacteria that remove nitrogen from wastewater. This is an essential part of wastewater treatment process. By impeding wastewater treatment, quacks can cause adverse impacts to the environment. Baywater Area Clean Water Agencies plans to submit a comment through your portal to provide more information about this harmful impact. We encourage DTSC to consider this harmful impact when regulating quacks in the future. So thank you, Mary, for that comment. It looks like we have another one here that says, please review MOCRA regulation as safety substantiation is required for cosmetic products. All right, thank you for that comment. We don't have any other comments on here, but go ahead and I'll allow a few more minutes to make sure that we have all of our comments being recorded. As well as you may have heard, there is a portal for you guys to submit public comments as well. So please go ahead and use that as well if you prefer. I don't see anyone in here with a raised hand, and I don't see any further comments. So we're going to allow a few more minutes. If there is, and there was a link that was just placed in the chat if you want to submit your comments through the portal rather than reading them here today. Okay, no more comments. So we'll allow until about 10:22 here, another minute or so. Okay. This is going to be our final call for submitting some comments here on the Q&A feature or raising your hand to submit a live comment. Okay, and then just as a reminder, the link is in the chat for the public comment portal that we have for safer consumer products. So please go ahead and make sure that you have that link if you want to submit a comment later. You have until January 28th at 11:55 p.m. in 2025 in order to submit through that portal. And anyone requesting an extension, please reach out to the Safer Consumer Products team in order to submit those comments. So it looks like that might be one more comment. It says, please be careful with the definition of cleaning products and products used in personal care. There are products in the consumer space that bleed into the professional sector. So regulation of these needs to carefully be considered to protect food safety. All right, thank you for that. I'm gonna allow another minute or so. See if there's anyone else that's typing. And you can, and we also just put in the chat here the email address for Safer Consumer Products. Go ahead and email saferconsumerproducts@dtsc.ca.gov. And it should be listed right under the link to our Safer Consumer portal for additional public comments here. I don't see any further comments, so I think this will conclude our comment session of today, as well as our presentation for today. Thank you for your interest and participation. I will now pass it off to Andre Algazi for our closing remarks. Andre?
Thank you, Jessica, and thanks to all of you for attending and sharing your comments and perspectives with us. We really value those. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Andre Algazi, manager in the Safer Consumer Products program. I lead our chemical and product evaluation branch. Before we close today's workshop, I wanted to take a minute to thank Brian and Jennifer for their excellent presentations this morning, and our entire Quaternary Ammonium Compounds team for their work writing the background document and preparing for today's workshop. And thank you, Jessica, for excellent facilitation, and Robin for your leadership and support. Speaking of the background document, if you haven't already, I encourage you to read it. It's on our Safer website, and there's also a link on the workshop and events page, and I think there's also a link in the chat. Our team did a great job synthesizing its findings on quacks, potential exposures from the products we've been talking about today, and the potential adverse impacts that can result from those exposures. As Jennifer mentioned in her presentation, the document also includes a list of questions we hope you can help answer to inform our future work and decisions on possible regulation of one or more of these products as priority products. As Jessica just said, our comment period is open until Tuesday, January 28th at 11:59 p.m. So you have a couple more months. I'm sorry, a couple more weeks, not months. As a reminder, you can submit written comments and information through our Cal Safer portal. And really, public engagement and comments are key parts of our process. We read and consider all of them, and they really help us ensure that we get our regulations right. So thanks in advance for your comments. So with that, I'll thank you again for attending and participating in our workshop. And I think that brings it to a close. I'll hand it back to Jessica for any final comments or business.
Thank you, Andre. No, that completes our webinar for today. Thank you for joining us today. Please reach out on the portal or by email to our wonderful Safer Consumer Products team. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.